Stop everything you are doing right now, because the flawless multi-million-dollar facade of the elite Guthrie dynasty did not just crack. It completely shattered into a million unrecoverable pieces. What if I told you that the perfect family vacations, the pristine charity galas, and those blinding porcelain smiles were all a carefully orchestrated cover-up for something deeply sinister? Her name was Nancy Guthrie, and exactly 24 hours before she vanished off the face of the earth, she sent a terrifying, frantic message to an elite, invite-only group chat that was never supposed to see the light of day. The message read in all capital letters, "They can't hide it anymore." No context, no explanation, no follow-up, just 5 explosive words that sent shockwaves through the dark underbelly of high society. Then total dead silence. The next morning, Nancy's high-end sports car was found abandoned on the side of a desolate highway, engine still idling, phone missing, and her luxury purse left untouched on the passenger seat. Now ask yourself this. What did Nancy discover in the shadows of her family's empire that made her an immediate liability? Who was so utterly desperate to keep her quiet that they made a prominent heiress vanish into thin air in broad daylight? Grab your popcorn and lock your doors, Internet, because we are about to tear the lid off the most terrifying, high-stakes cover-up of the decade. The luxury gates of the Guthrie estate have officially turned into a crime scene, and the Internet is collectively losing its absolute mind. To understand how a glamorous billionaire heiress simply vaporizes into thin air, we have to look at the people holding the smoke machines. The Guthrie family has spent decades positioning themselves as the ultimate blueprint of old money perfection, luxury lifestyle goals, and pristine public relations. They are the kind of family that makes you feel poor in a baseline economic way, just by looking at their coordinated linen outfits during their annual summer trips to private islands. If you scrolled through their perfectly curated social media feeds last week, you would have seen nothing but million-dollar smiles, golden hour lighting, and captions about generational wealth and philanthropic foundations. But behind those heavily filtered, pristine photographs lies a toxic swamp of generational trauma, financial deception, and ruthless corporate greed that would make a Hollywood villain blush. Nancy Guthrie was never supposed to be the rebellious one in this highly calculated, media-trained family dynamic. She was the golden child, the brilliant corporate strategist, and the woman who held the literal keys to the entire Guthrie financial empire. For years, she played her part beautifully, standing next to her prominent family members at charity galas and nodding gracefully while they talked about changing the world. But according to high-level corporate whistleblowers and anonymous digital forensics experts, Nancy started looking a little too closely at the family ledger books a few months ago. She was not just auditing standard business transactions. She was pulling back the velvet curtain on a highly complex, multi-layered international financial operation that connects the Guthrie name to dummy corporations in offshore tax havens. It turns out that the family's grand charitable foundation was allegedly functioning as a massive, highly illegal washing machine for money that should have never entered the country. The cracks in the armor started appearing long before Nancy sent that explosive final message to the family group chat. If you look closely at the public appearances of the Guthrie siblings over the past 6 months, the tension was practically radiating through the television screens. There were sudden, unexplained cancellations of major business mergers, abrupt changes in leadership positions, and a bizarre string of late-night security incidents at their primary compound. Neighbors in their ultra-exclusive, gated community reported seeing multiple unmarked, high-end security vehicles arriving at the property at ungodly hours of the night. A former personal chef for the family recently went on an anonymous podcast and claimed that the shouting matches behind closed doors became so intensely violent that staff members were regularly asked to sign fresh, highly restrictive non-disclosure agreements just to keep their jobs. The illusion of the perfect, peaceful billionaire family was completely dead. They were just running a very expensive simulation for the public. But the real drama began when Nancy discovered the existence of what internet sleuths are now calling the shadow ledger. This was not just a secondary set of books keeping track of petty cash or standard tax evasion schemes. The shadow ledger was a comprehensive digital archive detailing decades of corporate espionage, targeted blackmail, and systematic payouts to high-ranking officials to keep the family's legal troubles completely buried. For a family that prides itself on being the literal pinnacle of moral superiority, discovering that their entire fortune was built on a foundation of digital extortion and systemic fraud was a nuclear bomb. Nancy, according to close personal associates who are now terrified for their own safety, refused to take part in the family business anymore. She reportedly gave her family a strict, 24-hour ultimatum to come clean to federal investigators, or she would personally hand over the encrypted drives herself. Instead of complying with her demands, the family did what they do best. They initiated a total digital lockdown. Within hours of Nancy's ultimatum, her corporate access codes were abruptly revoked, her official security clearance was canceled, and her own family members began publicly gaslighting her to their elite social circles. They started telling anyone who would listen that Nancy was experiencing a massive psychological breakdown, that she was hallucinating conspiracies, and that she needed immediate, isolated medical attention. It is a classic textbook elite tactic. When someone threatens to expose the empire, you do not argue with them. You simply convince the world that they have completely lost their mind. But Nancy was 3 steps ahead of them, and she had already duplicated the entire digital archive onto an encrypted external hard drive that she hid somewhere outside the family compound. The night before she disappeared, the internal warfare reached a boiling point inside the family's highly private, encrypted group chat. This chat was reserved exclusively for immediate family members and their top-tier legal advisors, a digital sanctuary where they could discuss their darkest secrets without fear of interception. But an anonymous hacktivist group manages to clone a portion of the chat logs, and what they found is absolutely chilling. The logs show a desperate, terrified Nancy trying to reason with her siblings, telling them that the truth is already leaking out, and that they cannot outrun the consequences this time. Her family members, instead of showing concern, responded with cold, calculated legal threats, ordering her to stay silent and reminding her of the family legacy. That is when Nancy realized that her own flesh and blood would rather see her ruined than see their financial empire compromised. The last message Nancy ever typed before her phone completely disconnected from the cellular network forever was sent at precisely 3 in the morning. It was a direct response to a highly threatening message from her brother, who told her that she needed to think about the consequences of her actions. Nancy simply replied with those 5 devastating words that are now printed on every news headline across the globe. They can't hide it anymore. It was not just a statement of defiance. It was a definitive declaration of war against the very institution that raised her. 24 hours later, her luxurious life was wiped clean from the physical world, leaving behind a trail of digital breadcrumbs that point directly back to the people who shared her last name. The public is looking at a highly organized, deeply funded disappearance that could only be executed by individuals with unlimited resources and zero moral boundaries. What makes this entire situation completely unprecedented is the level of absolute silence coming from the remaining Guthrie family members. While the rest of the world is screaming for answers, posting theories on every social media platform, and demanding a full-scale federal investigation, the family is acting like it is just another standard Tuesday. They have hired the most expensive, aggressive crisis management public relations firm in the country to handle all media inquiries. Every single statement released to the press is a masterclass in corporate deflection, expressing vague concern for Nancy's well-being while subtly reminding everyone to respect their privacy during this sensitive time. It is the exact same robotic response they use whenever one of their businesses faces a product recall or a minor labor strike, proving that to them, Nancy's life is just another public relations crisis that needs to be managed and minimized. But the internet is not a corporate board of directors, and you cannot issue a press release to silence millions of independent investigators who are currently digging through your trash. Within 48 hours of the disappearance, a massive collective of online detectives began cross-referencing the family's historical travel logs, corporate filings, and private flight manifests. What they discovered is a highly disturbing pattern of synchronized movements that occurred the exact same night Nancy went missing. The family's private luxury jet took off from a regional airport at 4 in the morning, flying to an unregistered private airfield, only to return 3 hours later with its transponder completely turned off for a critical portion of the flight. When independent aviation journalists reached out to the pilot for a comment, he abruptly resigned from his high-paying position and deleted his entire online presence within 30 minutes. The deeper you go into this rabbit hole, the more you realize that the Guthrie family has been playing a massive game of chess with the legal system for a very long time. They have spent millions of dollars building a bulletproof network of corrupt local officials, high-priced defense attorneys, and influential media executives who are highly incentivized to keep the family's name out of the mud. This explains why the initial local police response to Nancy's abandonment vehicle was shockingly slow, with officers treating the scene like a simple case of a stranded motorist, rather than the high-stakes abduction of a billionaire heiress. It took a massive wave of public outrage and viral social media videos to finally force the authorities to secure the vehicle and launch a legitimate investigation. By that time, any potential forensic evidence on the scene had already been completely contaminated by the elements and foot traffic. The public is now witnessing a historic clash between old-money institutional power and the unstoppable force of decentralized online scrutiny. The Guthries are realizing, much to their absolute horror, that you cannot buy off every single content creator, every independent journalist, and every curious viewer who has access to a smartphone and a basic internet connection. Every single time the family tries to scrub a piece of information from the web, 3 more mirror links appear on underground forums within seconds. The leaked group chat screenshots, the suspicious flight logs, and the testimonies of former employees are now permanently etched into the digital fabric of the internet. The family's multi-million-dollar crisis management strategy is completely failing, because you cannot control a narrative when the entire world is actively participating in writing the script. As the financial markets began to react to the ongoing scandal, the Guthrie corporate stock experienced a massive, unprecedented freefall, wiping out hundreds of millions of dollars in family wealth in a single trading session. This financial panic has reportedly created an absolute pressure cooker environment inside the family mansion, with insider sources claiming that the remaining siblings are turning on each other in a desperate bid for self-preservation. When hundreds of millions of dollars are on the line, family loyalty out the window faster than you can say corporate restructuring. Rumors are circulating that at least one younger family member is currently in advanced negotiations with federal prosecutors to secure an immunity deal in exchange for the encryption keys to Nancy's hidden hard drive. They know that the ship is sinking, and nobody wants to be the one left holding the anchor when it finally goes under. The entire narrative around Nancy's disappearance took an even darker turn when independent digital forensics experts analyzed the specific metadata of her final group chat messages. They discovered that right before her phone went completely offline, a massive data dump was initiated from her device to an unknown, highly secure server located somewhere in Northern Europe. This means that even if the family successfully managed to neutralize Nancy, they completely failed to stop the automated distribution of the incriminating files she uncovered. The clock is officially ticking for the Guthrie dynasty, and they are fully aware that it is only a matter of time before those encrypted servers automatically release the devastating contents to the public. They are trapped in a digital cage of their own making, watching the countdown timer drop while the rest of the world waits with bated breath for the ultimate collapse of their empire. The automated distribution of those highly encrypted files did not just create panic inside the Guthrie boardroom. It triggered an absolute offline emergency that the family was completely unprepared to handle. As the countdown timer on the Northern European servers ticked closer to zero, the digital footprints left behind by the family's frantic damage control team became increasingly sloppy and obvious. Online detectives tracking the family's financial moves noticed that a massive wave of capital began moving out of the family's primary domestic accounts at opening bell the very next morning. We are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars being converted into liquid assets and shifted through a dizzying maze of obscure shell companies based in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus. It was the financial equivalent of packing your bags in the middle of the night and running out the back door while the house is still burning down. This sudden flight of capital caught the immediate attention of federal regulatory agencies, who had previously been content to let local authorities handle what they assumed was a simple missing person case. But when a billionaire family starts moving that much money across international borders within hours of an heiress vanishing, the narrative shifts from a domestic mystery to a high-profile federal financial investigation. Behind the scenes, specialized financial crimes units began quietly freezing the family's corporate assets, issuing emergency subpoenas for their private banking records, and placing high-alert watches on every single passport connected to the Guthrie name. The family's high-priced legal team tried to block these actions by filing a mountain of emergency injunctions, but the sheer volume of public scrutiny made it impossible for sympathetic judges to quietly sweep the matter under the rug. While the lawyers were fighting a losing battle in federal court, the physical search for Nancy Guthrie took an even more bizarre and unsettling turn. A group of independent civilian search and rescue volunteers, who had bypassed the official police barricades, discovered a discarded tactical encryption device hidden inside a hollow tree trunk, less than a mile from where Nancy's sports car had been abandoned. The device was badly scorched, as if someone had tried to destroy it with a thermite charge, but the internal solid-state storage drive was remarkably intact. When tech-savvy internet users analyzed the serial numbers leaked by the volunteers, they discovered the device was registered to a high-end, shadowy private military contractor that specialized in digital tracking, counter-surveillance, and corporate asset recovery. This discovery blew the entire case wide open because it proved that Nancy wasn't just running away from her family. She was actively being hunted by professional mercenaries hired with corporate funds. Former employees of this specific security firm began leaving anonymous tips on underground whistleblowing forums, claiming that the firm had been kept on a permanent multi-million-dollar retainer by the Guthrie family for over a decade. According to these leaks, the firm's primary objective was never property protection or standard security. Their sole purpose was to act as a private corporate intelligence agency. They monitored the communications of political figures, blackmailed business rivals, and tracked any family member who showed signs of straying from the strict corporate script. The revelation of this private mercenary army sent shockwaves through the tech community, prompting an immediate investigation into how deep the family's surveillance web actually ran. It turned out that almost every single electronic device inside the Guthrie compound, including the personal smartphones of the household staff, had been quietly infected with a highly sophisticated piece of commercial spyware. This spyware allowed the family's security chief to listen to live conversations, remotely activate phone cameras, and read encrypted messages in real time without anyone ever noticing a dip in battery performance. Nancy had somehow discovered this massive invasion of privacy weeks before her disappearance, which explains why she had suddenly started communicating through burner phones in secret, off-grid internet networks. As the public realized the terrifying scale of the surveillance apparatus, the remaining Guthrie family members found themselves trapped inside a fortress of their own making. Protesters began gathering outside the gates of their primary estate, carrying massive digital screens that displayed the leaked group chat messages for everyone to see. The family members could not even look out their front windows without seeing their own incriminating words staring back at them. The psychological pressure was becoming immense, and the pristine, united front that the family had maintained for generations began to completely disintegrate under the intense heat of public hatred. The first major break in family solidarity came from Nancy's younger cousin, an aspiring fashion influencer who had always been considered the black sheep of the dynasty. Late one evening, she bypassed the family's security team and initiated an unannounced, raw live stream from her personal social media account. Looking visibly shaken, pale, and completely terrified, she spoke directly to the camera for 3 minutes before the feed was abruptly cut off. She claimed that she had witnessed her older brothers destroying a massive stack of physical documents in the mansion's industrial incinerator just hours after Nancy's final message was sent. She also claimed that she had heard her father shouting over the phone that Nancy had ruined everything, and that she needed to be taken care of permanently. The live stream went viral within seconds, racking up tens of millions of views before the family's public relations team could contact the social media platform to have the video scrubbed for terms of service violations. But the damage was already done. The video had been downloaded, mirrored, and translated into dozens of languages by users across the globe. The cousin vanished from the estate the next morning, with family representatives claiming she had been admitted to an exclusive, private mental health facility due to the extreme stress of the situation. Nobody believed them, and the public outcry reached a fever pitch, with demands for the immediate arrest of the family patriarchs echoing through the halls of Congress. Meanwhile, the mysterious digital entity known as the Observer began posting again on the underground forums, releasing a new batch of decrypted data that added a whole new layer of corruption to the scandal. This leak contained the actual audio recordings of the family's emergency board meeting that took place the night Nancy vanished. The audio was crystal clear, capturing the raw panic and calculating coldness of the family members, as they realized that Nancy had successfully bypassed their digital defenses. In the recording, a voice that matched the family's chief legal counsel could be heard explicitly advising the board that a public trial would result in the total liquidation of their assets and multiple life sentences for corporate treason. The solution discussed on the tape was chillingly practical. They needed to treat Nancy's disappearance as a tragic, self-inflicted mental health crisis, while quietly utilizing their private security team to locate the hidden hard drive before federal agents could find it. The cold, analytical tone used by the individuals on the recording proved that to them, Nancy was no longer a sister, a daughter, or a human being. She was simply a catastrophic security flaw that needed to be patched at all costs. The public reaction to this audio was pure, unadulterated fury, and the corporate headquarters of the Guthrie empire was immediately surrounded by federal agents executing a massive multi-agency raid. The raid was broadcast live by news helicopters, showing federal agents wheeling out dozens of boxes of physical files and loading heavy servers into the backs of unmarked vans. For a family that had spent their entire lives operating in the shadows of maximum privacy, seeing their corporate secrets dragged out into the bright afternoon sun was the ultimate humiliation. But even as the government took control of their physical headquarters, the real battle was still being fought in the digital ether, where the automated countdown server in Northern Europe was entering its final hours. The family's remaining tech experts made a desperate, last-ditch attempt to launch a massive distributed denial-of-service attack against the European servers, hoping to crash the network before the files could be publicly unlocked. They flooded the servers with billions of bits of junk data, causing localized internet outages across several Scandinavian countries, but the automated system was built on a decentralized blockchain network that could not be taken down by standard cyber warfare tactics. The attack only succeeded in drawing more attention to the specific location of the data, ensuring that every major media outlet and independent journalist in the world was staring at the countdown screen, waiting for the clock to hit zero. At the exact same time, a local maritime patrol near the Catalina foothills reported a bizarre incident involving a luxury yacht owned by one of the Guthrie's shell companies. The vessel had reportedly been sitting dark in international waters for 2 days, refusing to respond to radio calls or standard Coast Guard hailing procedures. When a boarding party finally approached the vessel, they found it completely abandoned, with the onboard navigation systems wiped clean and a single, unencrypted laptop left open on the captain's table. On the screen was a live map tracking the exact real-time location of the federal agents currently raiding the Guthrie corporate headquarters. This terrifying discovery meant that even though the family was under heavy surveillance, they still possessed an active, functioning intelligence network that was running parallel to the official government investigation. The authorities realized that they were not just dealing with a wealthy family that had committed financial fraud. They were dealing with a deeply entrenched, sovereign corporate entity that had its own laws, its own enforcement mechanisms, and its own private methods of making people disappear. The realization sent a chill through the entire investigative team, who suddenly understood that finding Nancy Guthrie alive was becoming statistically impossible with every passing hour. The tension in the air was so thick you could practically feel it through the digital screens as the world waited for the final collision between the family's immense wealth and the absolute truth. The public narrative had completely shifted from a simple missing person case to a full-scale exposure of how the global elite operate when they think nobody is watching. The countdown timer on the Northern European servers had finally entered its last 60 seconds, and millions of users were repeatedly refreshing the page, ready to download the secrets that Nancy Guthrie had sacrificed her entire life to expose. When the countdown timer on the decentralized Northern European servers finally struck absolute zero, the website did not crash from the overwhelming global traffic. Instead, it executed a flawless automated protocol that instantly distributed a massive multi-terabyte data archive across thousands of public peer-to-peer networks simultaneously. Within a matter of seconds, the absolute darkest secrets of the Guthrie dynasty became permanently etched into the public infrastructure of the internet, completely beyond the reach of any corporate lawyer, high-priced crisis management firm, or corrupt government official. The contents of that massive data dump were far more devastating than anyone in the online community had ever dared to speculate. The archive contained thousands of high-definition video recordings, internal corporate emails, encrypted audio files, and signed contracts that explicitly detailed a systematic, multi-decade operation of global blackmail and institutional manipulation. It turned out that the Guthrie family had not just built a financial empire. They had built a highly sophisticated corporate panopticon that secretly controlled some of the most influential regulatory agencies, judicial benches, and media executives in the country. The most shocking discovery buried within the leaked files was a highly classified internal folder labeled with those two terrifying words, Project Observer. The decrypted documents revealed that the Observer was not a rogue hacker, an anonymous whistleblower, or a hidden relative lurking in the family group chat. Project Observer was an artificial intelligence surveillance program developed in total secrecy by the Guthrie's tech subsidiary. The program had been specifically designed to predict, monitor, and neutralize any internal family dissent or external corporate threats before they could ever become public knowledge. Nancy Guthrie had discovered that this artificial intelligence was not just monitoring the family's business rivals. It was actively managing the lives of every single member of the Guthrie family itself. The program analyzed their private text messages, tracked their real-time biometric data through their smart devices, and used advanced psychological profiling to manipulate their decisions through subtle digital interventions. The family members who believed they were the elite masters of a global empire were actually just gilded prisoners of a highly automated corporate system that valued the survival of the family brand over any individual human life. The leaked files explicitly proved that the system had flagged Nancy as a critical system anomaly exactly 48 hours before her disappearance. The program had automatically initiated a total digital isolation protocol after her search queries regarding the family's original financial accounts triggered an internal security alarm. The automated system had determined that Nancy's intent to blow the whistle would result in a 100% probability of total corporate liquidation for the entire dynasty. To prevent this outcome, the program had issued a series of automated directives to the family's private security team. The public reaction to these specific revelations was an absolute, chaotic explosion of outrage that completely transcended the standard boundaries of internet drama. Massive crowds of furious citizens began marching toward the federal building where the seized Guthrie servers were being processed, demanding that the immediate arrest of the family patriarchs be carried out live on national television. The corporate stock of every single company associated with the Guthrie name did not just drop. It was completely delisted from the global financial exchanges as institutional investors scrambled to distance themselves from the radioactive brand. Under the immense, crushing weight of the public backlash, the walls of silence surrounding the inner circle of the Guthrie family finally collapsed entirely. Early that afternoon, federal prosecutors announced that the family's chief financial officer, who had been arrested during the corporate raid, had officially broken under interrogation and signed a comprehensive confession. In exchange for avoiding a maximum security prison sentence, he provided investigators with the exact coordinates of a highly classified, off-grid subterranean bunker hidden beneath a remote winery owned by a Guthrie shell company in the Arizona desert. A heavily armed federal tactical team immediately mobilized and launched a high-stakes, tactical raid on the desert property, accompanied by emergency medical personnel and independent forensic analysts. When they breached the reinforced steel doors of the underground facility, they did not find a high-tech command center or a hidden stash of gold bars. Instead, they discovered a fully functional, self-sustaining medical isolation suite that was completely cut off from the outside world's communication networks. Inside that sterile white room sat Nancy Guthrie. She was alive, physically uninjured, but heavily sedated under the strict supervision of a private medical team that had been hired under false pretenses by the family's security apparatus. The private doctors had been told that Nancy was suffering from an acute, violent psychological episode that required immediate, isolated clinical intervention to protect her from harming herself or destroying her family's public reputation. The live news broadcast of Nancy being wheeled out of the desert bunker and into a waiting emergency vehicle was watched by an estimated 80 million viewers worldwide. The narrative of the crazy, unstable heiress who had simply run away was completely dead and buried. The entire world had just witnessed physical proof of an elite corporate dynasty kidnapping their own flesh and blood to protect their hidden ledger books from federal scrutiny. As Nancy was being transported to a secure, government-protected medical facility, federal judges issued emergency arrest warrants for every single adult member of the immediate Guthrie family board. The family patriarch and his two oldest sons were arrested by federal marshals while attempting to board a private, unmarked helicopter on the roof of their downtown penthouse. The images of these wealthy, powerful men being led away in handcuffs, stripped of their tailored suits and pristine public images, became the most viral photographs in internet history. The legal fallout from the data dump immediately initiated a historic, cascading crisis that began to dismantle the corrupt networks of power that the Guthries had spent generations cultivating. Dozens of high-ranking regulatory officials, prominent politicians, and mainstream media executives who were exposed in the Project Observer files were abruptly forced to resign from their positions in disgrace. A special congressional committee was immediately formed to investigate how a single private family had been allowed to operate a sovereign corporate intelligence apparatus on domestic soil for so long without detection. Even though the physical mystery of Nancy's disappearance had been solved, the digital ripples of the scandal were far from over. Forensic tech experts analyzing the remains of the Project Observer program discovered that right before the federal agents seized the mainframes, a final encrypted transmission had been sent from the system to an undisclosed location. The destination was a dormant, high-security server network that had remained completely untouched during the entire investigation. When the independent tech collective finally managed to decrypt the final transmission, they found a single, short text file containing a list of names that sent a fresh wave of terror through the online community. The list did not contain the names of the Guthrie family members, their lawyers, or their corporate co-conspirators. It was a comprehensive list of other elite, billionaire families across the globe who had secretly purchased and implemented the exact same Project Observer surveillance system within their own private dynasties. The realization hit the public like a physical blow. The Guthrie scandal was not an isolated incident of a single corrupt family losing control of their private secrets. It was merely the first domino to fall in a massive interconnected matrix of global elite surveillance that extended far beyond a single missing person case. The internet realized that the battle for the truth had not ended with the rescue of Nancy Guthrie. It had actually just begun. Nancy, speaking through her newly appointed federal legal representation from an undisclosed, heavily guarded location, released her first official statement to the public 48 hours after her rescue. Her words were short, precise, and completely devoid of the standard public relations fluff that her family had used for decades. She thanked the millions of independent internet sleuths who had refused to let her story be buried, stating that their relentless digital scrutiny was the only reason she was still breathing. Her final sentence in that official statement perfectly mirrored the defiant tone of her original, leaked group chat message, serving as a chilling warning to the remaining global elites who were currently scrambling to delete their own digital footprints. She stated that the curtain had been permanently pulled back, the archives were completely public, and the world was finally watching the shadows. The era of total corporate privacy for the ultra-wealthy was officially dead, because as she had warned her family before the silence took her, they simply cannot hide it anymore. And that, my friends, is how the absolute empire of the elite Guthrie dynasty crumbled down into a pile of digital ash in front of the entire world. It was never just about a missing person, and it was never just a simple family dispute over corporate shares. Nancy Guthrie pulled the thread on a global network of elite surveillance, and the entire system unraveled live on our feeds. But now that the dust is finally settling on the desert bunker and the handcuffs have clicked shut, the real question belongs to you. Do you believe that Project Observer has truly been deactivated? Or is this automated system still running quietly in the backgrounds of other elite families? Who do you think is going to be the next major dynasty to fall now that Nancy has shown the world exactly how to break the code? Drop your absolute wildest theories down in the comments section right now, because you already know I will be reading every single one of them. If you want to stay ahead of the shadows, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. We are tracking the next list of names on that hidden transmission, and you definitely do not want to miss what we uncover next. Thank you for watching, stay vigilant out there, and remember to look closely at the background because they can't hide it anymore.